believe Chairman Comer has something he would like to say.
Yes, and thank you, Madam Secretary, and we appreciate what you said in the last round of questioning. I want to be very clear. This committee is taking this investigation very seriously. We are following the money. We have a history of doing that over the past 2 years. I wrote the Treasury Department requesting suspicious activity reports related to Jeffrey Epstein. Treasury has been in full compliance, and our staff has spent untold hours reviewing those documents. I know the minority staff have also reviewed those documents. Anytime we subpoena anything, both sides get it. Based on the suspicious activity reports, I then issued subpoenas to 2 banks, Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan. The banks, those 2 banks are also in compliance and continue to produce thousands of pages of records. And I will say this before I turn it over to Representative Mace. This investigation is made very difficult when witnesses drag out negotiations for more than 6 months and violate their duly issued subpoena. So that's one reason when we're dealing with very powerful people that have the best attorneys out there, it's very difficult when it takes 6 months to get witnesses in. So I just wanted to mention that, and I'll yield to Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you for returning this afternoon. Secretary Clinton, is your husband someone the committee should investigate?
My husband will be here tomorrow. You'll have a chance to ask him questions.
So my question is your husband someone this committee should investigate?
Asked and answered.
Apparently you are. You've subpoenaed him. He's going to be here tomorrow.
In your testimony before the break, you discussed why you believe President Trump should testify before our committee due to a, quote, pattern of behavior, end quote. You testified that a pattern of behavior warrants accountability. So I want to make sure I understand your standard correctly. The pattern of behavior you describe includes being held civilly liable, indictments, sexually deviant behavior, correct?
Yes.
In 1998, your husband was found civilly liable for sexual misconduct with Paula Jones and settled for $850,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
By your standard of pattern of behavior, should your husband testify before this committee?
He is testifying tomorrow.
On December 19th, 1998, President Clinton was impeached on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice, which directly related to his extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, correct?
I didn't understand what you said.
Your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, his sexual behavior.
He was impeached for several reasons, and then was acquitted in the Senate.
And your husband flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane 17 to 26 times, correct?
He made several trips with different legs on the trip, as I recall.
But he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane
Yes, he
17 to
did.
26 times? Were you aware that Secret Service was dropped on some of those flights?
That is not my understanding.
Where they were not on some of those flights?
That is not my
So
understanding.
your understanding is that Secret Service was on all of the flights that President Clinton was on?
That is
with
my
Epstein?
understanding.
By this standard of behavior, multiple credible accusers, including Juanita Broderick, who alleged rape against your husband was disbarred in Arkansas, lost his law license before the Supreme Court, flew on Epstein's plane dozens of times, visited Epstein's island.
That is not true. That is absolutely untrue.
Well, there's documentation in the DOJ files. I'm not sure you're aware, your attorneys have told you, but Jeffrey Epstein told one of the victims to lie to investigators, to lie that Bill Clinton was ever on Epstein Island. I can provide that document to your
We
attorneys.
would like that document, please.
Okay.
Yeah, counsel,
I can do
because
that.
actually the files say just the opposite. Epstein himself denied he was.
These are FBI notes from an interview with a victim, and I can get you the victim number and the case number and the files. These are notes from a 302
If
interview.
you'd like those, are you going to provide those now?
That's not my line of questioning. She brought it up, but I have a
I'm
document I
sorry,
can give to
you're
you.
making a representation
Yeah.
as to the facts.
I didn't enter anything as an exhibit.
But it's factually inaccurate.
No, I can give it to you later. I can go find the document, make copies of it, and give it to you this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. By your standard of pattern of behavior, according to documents released by the Department of Justice, your husband appears in photos in swimming pools, hot tubs, aboard Jeffrey Epstein's private plane with unidentified young women. We came here today and you told this committee that a pattern of behavior demands accountability, correct?
I said that I believe the committee should call anyone who had a substantial pattern and practice of contact with Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes before they came to light.
Does that include your husband?
And after they came to light. You're going to have a chance to question him tomorrow.
So I'll ask you again, by the standard you just set in your own words just now, Does this standard apply equally to your husband or only President Trump?
I have said that my husband has been subpoenaed. He will appear. He will answer your questions to the best of his ability. But there is no evidence whatsoever of any connection with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. And I think that that will be obviously apparent in the questioning.
What makes you so sure of that then? I mean, he's photographed with.
Objection
No,
is to speculate on something that's not
Yeah,
evidence.
it is so speculative. I mean, swimming in a pool, sitting in a hot tub, there are millions of people who do that without any improper behavior or certainly committing any crimes. So I
Do you think
think
most of the men are like your husband that did anything wrong? Why were they being surrounded by young women, giving them massages on Jeffrey's private estate or private plane? Are they all innocent then?
You know, you are
because-
making assumptions in your questions that have not been proven and I don't believe are provable.
Okay, why did you wait 6 months to have this hearing today or have this testimony?
You know, I've answered that. I thought that given the way that other witnesses who were subpoenaed at the same time were being treated, that there was an unfair treatment of both my husband and myself. And I thought that, especially from my perspective, I had very little, if any, information to provide you, and that I could have done it in a sworn statement, and you could have moved on to depose somebody else who might have more information that would be beneficial to your
I have two more
investigation.
questions, then we're going to pass it to Congresswoman Luna. After Jeffrey Epstein was convicted, did it concern you at all that you had taken a substantial amount of money from Jeffrey Epstein?
That's an inappropriate assumption. I did not take a substantial amount of money from Jeffrey Epstein. So far as I know, Jeffrey Epstein contributed to the joint committee that was supporting my Senate race.
Which was how much?
I believe I was told $20,000.
And you don't consider $20,000 substantial?
I do not consider it relevant to me because I had no recollection that I ever knew that he gave any money to
So
the
you didn't
joint
talk to
committee.
your donors that gave $20,000 to your campaign?
My understanding of the rules back then is that there was no coordination between the committee and the campaign. So, no, I have no recollection
But that doesn't
of
mean
knowing
you
that.
can't speak to your donors. That doesn't prohibit, the law does
Don't-
not prohibit you speaking to
But
donors.
I didn't know he was a donor. As far as I knew, he was not a donor until I learned this in
Did it
preparation
concern you at
for the
all that Ghislaine
testimony.
Maxwell was heavily involved with people you knew and were close to?
I knew people that I knew her. Yes, that's true.
And you just shrugged, you didn't want to look into it or
You know,
have any
nobody,
question
you know,
about it?
until her crimes were revealed and she was indicted and tried and convicted, I don't think people knew very much about at all
And
what
then
she
how do
was
you know
doing.
Howard Lutnick?
I know Howard Lutnick because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnick missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping
know
his
that. I
child
asked
off
him.
to
You asked
kindergarten. You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're gonna yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent
You're
my
going to yell at me.
time doing.
I'm a
I
survivor
spent
trying
my-
to look out for other
Well,
survivors, trying to
and
get to the
I
bottom
was
of it.
taking care
You
of
waited
the
6
people
months
who
to
lost
get here today.
3,000
6 months,
lives
and now you're being
at World
defiant
Trade
and
Center.
indignant today.
You asked me
I have
about
met
Howard
with Epstein
Lutnick.
survivors. I'm a survivor myself. You have emails. You've denied that Jeffrey Epstein, that you tried to get Jeffrey Epstein to give money to you.
I did
but
not.
Howard Lutnick was
If
used
you
to
have an
get
email
money.
with me asking Jeffrey
I
Epstein
have
for
an
money,
email from Howard Lutnick sending it to
what's
Jeffrey
the question?
Epstein and his
What's the-
people to
I
raise
don't-
money for
I don't
you
know about-
for an event, an intimate event for you at his offices
Well,
at Cantor Fitzgerald. You're
look,
going to sit
if
here
you-
today
if you would
and,
let me
and,
finish.
and obfuscate and say to this committee, you didn't try to get money from Jeffrey
I didn't.
Epstein when
I
there was
didn't.
an intimate event in an email that Howard Lutnick emailed to Epstein's people and Epstein to get him to come to your intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald, a very small event. And so I'm not going to put up. You want to yell at me, that's fine, but I'll yell right back.
Well,
okay? I am looking out for
it's
survivors.
very-
I'm doing
look-
the job that you would not do and refuse to do as Secretary of State. Thank you, and I yield back to
no,
Congresswoman.
I'm going to finish answering the question, which I have a right to do. I am very sympathetic to your personal situation. I have read about it. I have seen you testify or speak on the floor about it. And I very much sympathize with not only what you went through, but appreciate your effort to stand up for survivors. I was a senator representing the people who were murdered on 9/11. Nobody lost more people than Howard Lutnick. You can say whatever you want. You can call him and have him appear before the committee. But I knew him as the man who lost the employees that he knew intimately, including his brother.
And he was a
So
go-between
I
between
worked-
you and
Let
Jeffrey
her finish
Epstein
her
raising
answer,
money for
please.
you.
Let her finish her answer.
You know what? If you don't want to hear what emotionally affected me, that's fine. But that's why I know Howard Lutnick. I went to the memorial service every 9/11 after the formal service was held.
I see what you're
with
doing here,
all-
and you're
with
obfuscating
all
from the
of his
questions. He was the
people, the
go-between
families.
between you and Jeffrey Epstein raising money for your
Well,
campaign.
you know, Howard Lutnick and I did work
Thank you. I will
together
now yield
because
to
we had a
Congresswoman
lot of
Lena.
victims
Thank you.
to take care of, and we worked together to rebuild downtown Manhattan. That is how I know Howard Lutnick.
Why don't you